business, biceps, a little BS. Fitness mixed with finance, now you're really gonna see us as we're learning, growing. All your minds we're blowing, earning while we're burning. Shirts are tight, so games are showing. Resolve, evolve, absolve, it's time to make a move. Better check yourself, cause if you're doubting, no, we got the proof. Voices speaking loud, cause we're proud about what we can do. Tickling your ears with CPE, rooted in the truth.
In the wildwood of accounting, we all know garbage data in means garbage data out. The same thing applies to your body. As a C-suite guy who obviously lifts, I want to be just as sharp in the boardroom as I am in the weight room. I don't have time for guesswork supplements or flashy nonsense, and that's why I use Redcon One. Clean ingredients, real formulas, stuff that actually works when you're training at 5 a.m. at the gym or burning midnight oil in your month-end grind. So whether you're an accounting bro, finance bro, or business leader in an NGO, if you want more energy, better recovery, and fewer excuses, this is your sign. Head to redcon1.com and use promo code BIZBUYSANDBS for 20% off. Don't just audit your numbers, audit your nutrition by leaning into America's favorite supplements at Redcon One. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, welcome to the show. A little disheveled this morning, but that's okay because I think that's what makes this very authentic. We're gonna try to unpack who Steve McNally is in the next 50 minutes, so people can at least get their CPE and understand a little bit more about your biography.
Fabulous.
Welcome to Business Biceps and BS, where we flex on everything. So no, I'm really happy that you can make it. I know that last time we tried to have you in a little bit earlier, but you were coming from where?
Well, so thank you for your flexibility. So
yeah.
I knew I was going to be out of the country. I was in India with IMA, Institute of Management Accountants. That part was planned. I thought I was getting back earlier in the week of when we were going to meet. And then I was asked to actually go on to Dubai and Abu Dhabi to represent IMA with some corporate visits and a conference and an executives roundtable. And it literally just couldn't work out. In fact, I think the time frame we had, I was on a plane somewhere over, I don't know what ocean. So thank you for your flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're a busy guy. Your career has taken you all over the place, and so I really want to unpack first of all how you got to where you are, because you seem to be in the prime of your career from the standpoint of being the most influential probably you've ever been, and you seem to just handle it with grace and poise. And everybody I talk to about you is like, oh yeah, you got to have this guy on your show. You got to talk to him about all these different things that he's doing. And so I'd love to know a little bit more about your IMA experiences, because you're on the global board there, if I say that correctly. But then just that alone, getting onto that board means that you've accomplished something in the world of accounting and finance, that you are the sage of sages, right? So there's something about you individually that really resonates with people, and I figure that would be a great element to come into the show, and not only to discuss it with all of our colleagues. Again, trying to reinvigorate them to understand why they got into this profession in the first place, but also moving on for the young professionals who are coming in, and they kind of look up the ladder, or as Nick Aracco would say, the lattice work, because there's no corporate ladder anymore. We kind of move horizontally and diagonally. How did you get to where you are? So those are the two things we're going to unpack today. But I'm sure there's going to be many rabbit trails, and we'll run them down until we catch the rabbit.
Well, I'm really excited to be here, and good luck unpacking. I look forward to it. I guess, in short, I love our profession. I don't know why. I guess it's in my DNA. I love our profession. In short, was a CPA at Price Waterhouse. That's where I started. Went back and in PwC. You were there as well, right?
Alone.
I think more or less the same time. I went on, got an international MBA, got with Campbell Soup Company. I was with Campbell Soup for many years, built a career there, became a small business CFO, but along the way, always doing nonprofit kind of stuff. I joke, I'm the perpetual volunteer. And in fact, at the moment, I'm doing two things. I'm figuring out what I want to be when I grow up and living the life of the perpetual volunteer. But I just love the profession and I like to share that because I think there's so much opportunity and it's just the best profession in the world. What more can you say?
Well, I'm curious. You say Campbell Soup is that where you so you started at PwC, then you moved over to Campbell Soup. Was that the direct connection there? That was before Sarbanes-Oxley said you couldn't do that?
Well, so I actually go back. I went to Villanova undergraduate.
Okay. Great basketball team.
The Pope, fellow alumni, Pope Leo. Got to throw that in, of course. So went to Villanova, and it was probably the fall of my senior year, and my favorite professor, Dr. Tim Monahan, and I just do shout outs to him whenever I can. He's retired now, but just the most awesome person. And he pulled me aside. He's like, Steve, are you interviewing with any of the Big Eight? It was Big Eight at the time.
Okay.
And I said, well, no. He's like, can you please promise me interview with at least one or two? And I did. And thankfully I did join PwC. But even walking in the door, my intent wasn't to basically have a career in public accounting. It was more a stepping stone. That much I knew. And when I walked in the door, the idea was to be there a couple years and then get an MBA. And once I was there, that was still my goal. But once you have your CPA, my MBA had to be an MBA with an edge.
Uh-huh.
And the edge, as I discovered at one point, was international business. And so I went back, got an international MBA, University of South Carolina, and then landed at Campbell Soup. So there was a gap. There was a gap there.
Well, it's good though, because so my sister and I used to have this, I won't call it an argument, but we fought when I was a kid. Don't worry. I locked her in a bathroom for 3 hours one time and just pushed a sofa in front of the door, and it got wedged in between a wall and stuff, so she couldn't get out for 3 hours. And I just remember when my dad got home, me rethinking that decision. that it probably wasn't the right decision, but
well, so for you, the decision was only 3 hours. It should have been more.
I could have I slid pizza under the door. She was fine, but no. So we had this ongoing conversation when she first went through. So we both went to the University of Florida. I grew up in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and she's a year older than me. Actually, she's not even a year older. She's like 357 days older than me.
Irish twins.
We are Irish twins, my friend. So my mom's like, leave me alone. But so we had this conversation because she went to school before me, and as she was going through, she's a master's in health administration / MBA, and when she went to school, she went straight into her MBA program. And it was funny because at the time I was kind of like, why? I get it. My dad used to tell us, hey, listen, get all the schooling you can before you get out, because once you have bills and responsibilities, it's really difficult to go back. And so taking his wisdom, Michelle went straight from the undergrad right into her MBA MHA program, which was a fantastic program at Florida. Well, one of the things she was challenged with is that she was in an MBA program with other people who actually had real experience. Now, she came straight through academia right into, and so it was funny because people would say things in those meetings. And there's this one guy, I think his name was Harold or Horace or some H name. And she's like, yeah, that guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. And I was like, what do you mean he doesn't know what he's talking about? The guy's has 17 years of experience in actual industry. And you're saying that he has no idea. She's like, he just doesn't know anything. Years later, and by the way, my sister was also the woman who at the time, my dad and I would say, it's all about your network. You got to build your network, right? My dad is a double E and an MBA from University of Illinois, and so he's like, you got to build that network, right? And she's like, I don't need a network. I got my own friends. It's like, well, first of all, that is your network. Secondly, you do need a network. So she's so confident coming into this MBA school, and then slowly finding out that, oh, wait a second. You do need a network. You do, all those things that this gentleman was saying that she was kind of poo-pooing at the time. She's like, oh, his experience, this is the reason to have an MBA, is to go, it's a real tangible experience. then go into your MBA and apply that to a whole bunch of people that have the same different backgrounds, different expertises, but now you're actually working together to figure this stuff out. So what you did by going off and getting your undergrad, working a little bit, going into your MBA, that's especially an international MBA. I mean, when did you graduate with an international MBA? That was probably a really hot item at the time.
So I guess first of all, I'd love to say I designed it that way. I didn't. I fell into it. I mean, I knew I wanted to get the MBA, but it's not that I knew, oh, get experience first and then go. Now, in retrospect, absolutely, it made all the sense in the world. Actually, it's interesting why I decided international business. So I was at PwC, and I was on a big client in Philadelphia. And I remember that morning watching the Berlin Wall fall down.
I remember this.
All right. And like, to me, that was huge. I mean, I knew enough to know that was a big deal. Then I got to work, and the whole day went along and no one mentioned it. I couldn't believe it. No one mentioned it because we're too busy working. I mean, and so I think that was the first thing that clicked of, this is a big world. I mean, I traveled a lot, backpacked around Europe. So, and that sort of clicked. And then it was probably a couple months later, reached out to Dr. Tim Monahan, my favorite professor at Villanova, for some recommendations. And ironically, in the mail, I got this little postcard from the University of South Carolina about their Master's in International Business program.
Nice.
And so I looked into it, and here, lo and behold, it was awesome. It was exactly what I was looking for. Extremely intensive, so you couldn't work and go to this program. I mean, it was full-time, literally.
Oh, wow.
Got there, so because I chose the German track because of that Berlin Wall experience. And the thing, I'd been to the Berlin Wall and seen it when it's still there. That's why it really resonated.
Okay.
So basically, I was in the German track, didn't know a lick of German. I had studied Spanish. And so I was in the summer, a 10-week German immersion program. And the first few weeks, Spanish kept coming out, even though I hadn't used it in years. But eventually I got there. And then it was very intensive general business and international business. And then most important to me was living over in Germany. First in Cologne going to a language institute, and then 6 months working for a top management consulting firm in an internship. And that is what I was looking for. Back to your sister's experience. So I didn't do it by design to get experience, then go. It just sort of worked. In my program, there were some individuals who came straight out of undergrad, and you could tell. Yeah. You absolutely could tell. They had nothing to interject in the conversations. And then you had some individuals who had 7, 10, 12 more years of experience. They were awesome. I was somewhere in between. I mean, I had a little bit of experience, so at least I had some real world. But truly, the more experience people had before being in the program, the more they contributed, the more value they added, but also the better for the rest of us to then have those really engaging conversations. So absolutely, like, I am now a believer you should work a little bit, and certainly that's what I've instilled in my kids too.
You know, I had a conversation on the drive up here to Atlanta. I was talking with the gentleman, Dan Irvine, who's a friend and a colleague. He's on the West Coast. He's writing a book, and so he's like, hey, I'd like to get your thoughts on some of these things. And so one of the questions that he had was, like, for young professionals who are coming up out of school and coming into public accounting, because we were specifically talking about public accounting. He said, what would you say is probably the way to grow in public accounting? And I said, well, there's really two ways. Two ways from the standpoint of, you can either grow by attrition, and what I mean by that is that I had a senior manager who had told me at one time, I was like really late on a Friday afternoon. I started my career at PwC in Tampa, and it's 5 o'clock. He was, it was a Friday, it was busy season. The sun's coming through the windows and the big beer can, which is now the Sykes building downtown off Ashley Street. But I'm walking around just because I just need to stretch, right? So I see him. I say, hey, Ed, what's going on? He's like, hey, just back and forth. I said, what are you still doing here? He's like, oh, I got a few things to manage. And so after a little bit of the conversation, he kind of imparted some wisdom to me, and I thought, this is really interesting. He basically told me that that growing up in the Big Four, the good ones leave, the bad ones get fired, and so everybody that's left is basically what's left. So I was like, wait, so this is like a war of attrition? He's like, that's exactly what it is. He's like, as long as you just kind of go to get along, it's like you can don't say anything stupid, sell a little bit of business, and you can have this career forever. And so I was telling him, like, you could do it very passively like that, and grow in the Big Four world. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more difficult, especially with our alumni PwC getting out there and just leveling incoming jobs, by the way, because they're going to take AI. We'll get to that in a second. But the other track that you can do is actually kind of grow yourself, leave public accounting, go out into industry, and then get 3, 4, 5 years and come back to public accounting. And I told him, I said, honestly, I think that's where public accounting is really going. I don't think people are lifers anymore inside public accounting. I think that they get their 2, 3, 4 years, and then they jump. They get a really good private experience, and then they come back because they love the environment of public accounting, but they don't really care for the people. Like, you're always the outsider. You're always either the auditor or the tax or the consultant. In the beginning of your career, that's not really a fun place to be. I mean, you get exposed to a lot, but you don't really learn anything, right? And so now you jump over here in the private sector, and you know, it's funny, the break from coming to public and going to private, you felt it, is like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Your eyes are open. It's a little bit slower pace depending on where you're going to be, because you're always rat race, you know, this go. Then you jump over here, everything kind of slows down, but then it's a totally different pace. It's a totally different stress level, really. But then you take that back into public accounting. Now you are a double threat. You understand how public accounting works. You understand the billing cycles and all this stuff. And hopefully you're a really good people person, because that's what public accounting really is anyway. But then you also have the skills to speak into a client as opposed to just kind of around on the fringes. And they look at you like, don't you even understand my business? It's like, well, yeah, actually, I spent 4 years in a manufacturing facility. Now I'm back. Like, oh, okay, well, give me some advice.
It's incredibility.
Yeah. So I think what you did, even though you didn't do it by design, there was a design, and you followed dutifully, and I appreciate that, because where it led you to is Campbell, right?
Yep.
Tell me about were you like the target CEO? Did you start on the bottom and move your way all the way up? I mean, did you come in as a manager? How did that work?
Right. So first of all, I rolled my eyes as you're saying you leave public accounting and move into the public, or into a company, and it's easier and less stress. Quite the opposite, actually, right. I thought, but maybe things have changed. So in my case, as I said, I joined PwC with every intentions of making it a couple years, a stepping stone. And I can honestly say, even when I started PwC, certainly when I went for my MBA, I had sort of a short list of the kind of company I wanted to work for. And that was a company like Campbell Soup, like Coca-Cola. And actually, when I was at University of South Carolina, made it down to Atlanta a few times, went to the Coke Museum, totally enamored by everything they did. I don't know if it's still there or not, but I'd have to say, when I went over to Germany, my number one target was Coca-Cola. And then also on that top 5 would have been Coke, Hershey, and a couple others. So interestingly, at the time, at least, South Carolina would send out what they called a resume book to those companies that had relations with them, that maybe had brought in, like me, interns along the way. And so it was towards the end of my time in Germany, and then I had one more semester. That was the fall, got home literally on New Year's Day, and had one more semester. How old was I?
Yeah.
26, 27.
Wow. Okay, go. Continue. Yes. What a great upbringing. Go ahead.
So came back, had one more semester to go. Well, I came back to a phone call from the school saying, hey, Campbell Soup Company's reached out. They want to meet with you before you come back to school. So in those first few days of January of 1992. 92, right? So 1992. And so I did literally, pack my bags, stop by Campbell Soup headquarters, Camden, New Jersey, met with the VP of Internal Audit, and had a great conversation, drove on to South Carolina, and, within weeks, actually, or days even, had an offer, weeks until I accepted it. My intent was still to talk to some of these other companies. I'd done so much homework. I created a cover letter and a resume, and I had a list of these companies I wanted to talk to, and I didn't get to use any of it because I went to Campbell's so fast. So long
Sorry,
story
you got
short,
a job.
I got a job, So I started at Campbell Soup, and I did start in internal audit. And honestly, 1992 was not a great year for newly minted MBAs. And so initially I'm like, oh, I'm going back into audit because that really wasn't my thing. But it was the most wonderful and awesome experience because at Campbell Soup, and I think it's this way at many companies, internal audit, it is a stepping stone within the company itself. For the next 2 years, I was literally traveling around the world, and because I knew Spanish and I knew German,
Wow.
many doors opened up for me to do those international assignments, and you just got to know the company and you got to know the people and the products. And so, yeah, that's where I started, though, in internal audit.
That's incredible because a lot of times internal audit is where people go in their careers that's where they just live. They get pigeonholed into internal audit for the rest of their career.
You weren't allowed. I don't know what it's like now. I'm gone, but you weren't allowed. The idea was you went into audit and it was 3 to 5 years max. Now,
Wow.
I was on the early end of getting out, and I'll be fully transparent. Let's just say I was never meant to be an auditor. I did it at PwC, I did it at Campbell Soup, but one of two things was going to happen. Either I was going to get kicked out of audit into another role at Campbell's, or I was going to get kicked out of Campbell Soup. Fortunately, I was kicked into another role at Campbell Soup.
So you made your way up the ranks. So when you left Campbell Soup, how long was your career there, and at what level did you climb?
So I was at Campbell Soup, built a career at Campbell Soup for nearly 25 years.
Oh my goodness.
My last role as a finance executive for Campbell's largest supply chain operations, I'll come back to that. But over those 25 years, I don't know, probably had 10 or so different roles, positions, always finance and accounting related. Quite a few were special project related.
Cool.
Sarbanes-Oxley, I know you mentioned Sarbanes-Oxley. One of the hats I wore was co-leading Campbell Soup's original SOX team and defining our methodology and our approach and rolling it out, literally going around the world, training cross-functional partners what SOX was, what they had to do for us to be in compliance with it. One of my favorite roles was as the finance director for our ready-to-serve soup brands, including Chunky Soup. With Chunky Soup, at the time, we were engaged in what was called the Mama's Boys campaign with the NFL. And so I got to literally meet. That was so much fun, literally going around, meeting the players. And that's, I know recently there's been a lot of talk about finance, whether it's the CFO or members of the CFO's team being business partners. The reality is my entire career as a business partner, and I couldn't imagine a career having not been a business partner. Meaning, and I'll use Chunky Soup as the example, we were a cross-functional team. We had marketing, research, supply chain, R&D, manufacturing, finance, and sales, of course. Don't forget the sales. That's pretty important. And we were a team, and we were setting the strategies. We were executing the strategies. And yes, and this is where I was laughing about, oh, it's less stressful. Are you kidding me? My day was with the cross-functional team, and around 5 o'clock at night, that's when I could finally do the financial reporting and analysis. So I was ready for the next day.
I understand this.
Yeah.
The whole quick question mentality, right? There's no such thing as a quick question, Steve.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so there was this commercial that came out. I forget. I remember it growing up where there were 5 brothers, and they were sitting at a table, and it went from older brother, younger brother to like the youngest brother was maybe like 5 years old, maybe 6 years old. And,
Mikey will eat it.
So Mikey was the shredded wheats, right? But there was one. It was for Campbell Soup, and it was for their chicken soup. And what they were trying to say is that there's enough chicken in the soup that that you can feed 5 boys at a table. And so as it's going through, they're scooping it up into their bowls. And so finally, you have the little boy at the end, and he's looking in the soup, and he looks up at his mom, and he goes, "There's chicken in this soup." It's as if like she served everybody, and the last one still had chicken. That has never left me. In fact, even when I eat chicken soup, like from Chick-fil-A or what have you, I always look at it like, "There's chicken in this soup." And I think of that little boy and how Campbell's just nailed it. They nailed that campaign. That's like, yeah, that there's so much chicken in that soup. You can feed 5 just growing boys. So great job with that. I'm sure it came out of your head, and you're very Mad Men style.
Can't take any credit for that. However, I would say, so our Mama's Boys campaign, at some point in time, we partnered with Donovan McNabb from the Eagles. Yeah. And this is a joke, but I'm going to take credit anyway. So actually, is the Super Bowl in Atlanta. Okay. And so being part of that cross-functional team, I had the opportunity. We were down in Atlanta, and we went to, I think it was on the Friday night, and it was the quarterback club. And so it was all the quarterbacks. And my memory, I don't really know what this venue was, but my memory of it was like this house that was so full that it vibrated, like literally, like in my mind, it's like the walls are coming in and out. And so when the front door opened and someone came in, everyone had to shift to make room. Well, at one point that happened, and next thing, my wife and I find ourselves, face to chest with Donovan McNabb. Oh, so we're talking a little bit. Well, is literally a month later is when we selected him to be our spokesperson for the next year's Mama's Boys campaign. And what was really cool about that, so in the past, in those commercials, we had actresses playing the moms. Well, Donovan McNabb's mom, she had no way. No one was going to play her. She would play herself, and she did, and she was awesome. And so, yeah, that was just such a wonderful opportunity. I must admit.
So from Campbell Soup, where did you go from there?
Well, so with Campbell's, I mean, before we end, I spent most of my career. Well, I spent much of my career at Campbell's at headquarters in Camden, New Jersey. Okay. And then at some point when my kids were young, this was 2006, I had the opportunity to become the finance executive for our largest supply chain operations in Northwest Ohio. By the way, I'm currently living in Northwest Ohio. There'll be a connection there. So I couldn't refuse it. I mean, everyone at headquarters knew that our Napoleon operations were the biggest. Everyone knew that. Until I was out here, no idea how big, how important those operations were. To put in perspective, so at the time, Campbell Soup was roughly an $8 billion business, soup, sauce, beverage products, and we had about 30 sites around the world. Well, I came to learn that the Napoleon operations here in Northwest Ohio accounted for 20% of the company's global sales. Goodness. Wow. My team, I had like a team of 21, 22 professionals, most of them in Northwest Ohio, but some in Michigan and ultimately some in Wisconsin. And it was a bigger, quite frankly, even though my title was finance director and controller, it was a bigger team and bigger responsibility in some respects than some of the bigger titles back in Camden. Wow. Certainly more, independence. My boss was the supply chain executive for the operations, and it was just a wonderful experience. And then over those years, this was 2006, 3 to 5 years. I lasted more than 3 to 5 years, obviously, out here with Campbell Soup. But over those years, I co-led the implementation of SAP. I was part of our collective bargaining. So we had maybe more than 1,000 union employees. And so I believe I'm the first finance person at Campbell Soup that was actually part of the negotiations team at the table. Always, of course, finance was in the background supporting, but I was at the table. I was there till 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 a.m. in those last nights. I learned a lot, just all those kind of initiatives, and it was just wonderful. So that's what brought us out to Northwest Ohio in 2006 for 3 to 5 years, and here we still are. So when we came out, my son was just going into kindergarten, daughter was still in preschool. The idea was be out here during those years, move back or move somewhere. Well, long story short, I was having too much fun out here. Things were changing back in Camden and around the organization. And so hit a point where I was ready for a change. Kids are going into high school. And so therefore, I had to make a move, and it wasn't going to be with Campbell Soup. And so and I'll just keep running and then I'll stop. But earlier on, you were talking about the importance of networking and how you and your dad saw it, and maybe your sister didn't quite see it up front. Honestly, I wish younger in my career, people had told me about the importance of networking.
Okay.
And I don't
Unpack that.
I will. I don't lose the opportunity to tell the young professionals and the students. That's one of the first things I tell them now. Network, network, network. So when we moved out here is for 3 to 5 years. I was at this point engaged in IMA. I had a great network back in the Philadelphia area and through Campbell Soup. I didn't network here in Northwest Ohio. Why would I? I'm here 3 to 5 years. Well, once I realized it's time for me to move on, kids are going into high school. I need to make a change, but I need to stay here. That's when I started to network here.
Mm-hmm.
And what I can tell you is this, and then I'll be quiet. Basically, over the course of like 6 to 8 months, engaged in coffee, you start with those, and it branches out. And long story short, it was a Wednesday morning. I get this phone call. It's the chair of the board of PTI, Plastic Technologies, Inc. That's where I became a small business CFO. Hey, is this Steve McNally? Sure is. Hi, I'm Betsy Brady. I'm the chair of PTI. We're looking for a CFO. I was told I need to call you and talk to you.
Very cool.
Well, she's like, can you come in on Friday to meet with our CEO? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm actually IMA. We have our national conference going on in Indianapolis. I won't be here on Friday. Well, can you come in tomorrow? I'm like, okay. Met the CEO the next day. Very different kind of interview. Showed up, going to the conference room. He's, pulls up a presentation introducing me to PTI. Was surprised to find out, and actually, I'll never forget, like the third or fourth slide had all the logos of their clients, because what PTI does is sustainable packaging innovation for companies like Campbell Soup. Campbell Soup is one of their clients. So I see that, I'm like, oh, wow. Long story short, I get the offer. I come to find out 5 people in my network had reached out to them to say, you got to talk to this guy. 3 of them I didn't even know 6 months in advance. And I come to find out they didn't interview anyone else. I'm like, are you crazy? You have to interview more than one person. But I guess because of the network and the recommendations, there you go. So
they had their guy.
Now I get it. Networking is so important.
Oh yeah, 100%. So this is a great segue into, you had mentioned you were with the IMA. You had something going on with the IMA, Institute of Management Accountants, and obviously our buddy Mike DePrisco over there leading the charge. All the big global board that's steering that organization, and it's 20. How many members?
We have about 135,000 members.
Yeah,
in over 150 countries.
My goodness, it's gigantic. So. Talk about a network. But now that you have all this experience, you've basically taken on the Fortune 100 companies. You're now working for a small organization as the CFO, and you're back down in the thick of it, right? And you've got German, you've got Spanish under your belt. You're basically the consummate professional when it comes to CBOs. You're doing it all. Now you go over to the IMA. You bring that wisdom over to the IMA. Tell me how that has further broadened your appeal, not only to other people who are trying to learn from you, but also what you brought to the table to help the IMA elevate its product.
So I mentioned up front, I am the perpetual volunteer. So that's the first point, and maybe that comes from Villanova. It's in our DNA to give back to the community. Maybe that's where it started. And so early in my career, PwC, I got my CPA, joined the Pennsylvania Institute of CPAs, and am still a member and have been for years. I'm actually on their editorial board, still write articles. At some point, I joined IMA. It's actually sort of funny and ironic. I was reading the Journal of Accountancy from AICPA, and at the time, there was an ad about this, I think, a certified financial manager certification.
I remember
And
this.
so, talked to my boss. I got the permission to become an IMA member. This was back in the 90s, to get the materials and to go for this certification. Unfortunately, back to rolling my eyes when you say it's not so stressful at a big company after, public accounting. Well, the box of materials arrived at my house, shoved it into my closet without opening it. Didn't see it till about 10 years later when we
Oh
were
my goodness.
relocating from Pennsylvania to Ohio. But long story short, so I became an IMA member in the 90s, but really wasn't that involved. Or wasn't. I mean, Strategic Finance, our magazine, that was my connection for many, many years. Well, then what happened was, I mentioned at Campbell Soup, I co-led our Sarbanes-Oxley, the original compliance team. And then when I moved out of that role, I became essentially finance director for Campbell's newest division at the time. Soup sauce and beverage division, I think is what we called it. I actually would have to check. But along with my other hats, I was basically the director of financial reporting and all kinds of responsibilities, one of which was to be our Sarbanes-Oxley contact, which made sense. So I introduced and for this new division created the SOX compliance approach for this new division. Well, when I moved out to Ohio, I was still wearing that hat for another 6 months or so, and also took on the SOX hat for Campbell's largest operations. And at the time, we were thinking about introducing a new approach to SOX. Long story short, I saw about this conference that was being co-hosted by IMA and Rutgers, and so I went to it. And while I was there, I started talking to this gentleman. His name was Jeff Thompson. And at the time, he was VP of Education or something, went on to become IMA's CEO for 15 years prior to Mike DePrisco. And so one thing led to another. We had a great conversation there. Next thing, he was creating some global IMA task force. He asked if I'd be part of it. I'm like, of course. And then I saw they were doing a call for nominations for the global board of directors, quite frankly, having no idea how prestigious and difficult it would be to be selected.
Right.
But I was selected. So next thing I find myself on the global board of directors. At that point is when COSO, the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission, was going to update their internal control framework for its 20th anniversary.
Right.
Because of that SOX background, I was asked if I'd be willing to, represent IMA on COSO's advisory council. That became a big and fun deal. And one thing just led to another, over the years, led various committees and led our annual conference committee, all kinds of things. Culminating, well, do you ever really culminate? Culminating as global chair of IMA in 2021, 2022. Being global chair of IMA, it's actually like a 3-year commitment. You're chair-elect, you're global chair, then you're chair emeritus, each year with different responsibilities. But while I was global chair, that is when Jeff Thompson, our then nearly 15-year CEO, announced he'd be retiring. And since I was global chair, I'm the one he told first. The first thought that went through my head was, Jeff, you've got the greatest job in the world. I would love your job. Second thought was, I'm global chair. What a conflict of interest that would be. Did the next best thing. I led
got myself CEO.
Yeah. Wouldn't go over well. Would not go over well. So end up leading the search committee. We hired Mike. And then actually, interestingly, the next year, I was asked to come back and lead a task force to ensure that our global technical and advisory committees were fit for purpose. And so it's just, I've continued to be involved. Actually, in 2 weeks, here in Ohio. So IMA, for those that don't know, we're a global organization, 135,000 plus or minus members, over 150 countries. But we're also known for our chapters, and there is a couple chapters here in Ohio. We have a council that works with them. Well, we're actually introducing our first Ohio conference, the Finance and Accounting Summit in 2 weeks. So I'm really excited, or 1 week now, really excited about that. So it's just, I love giving back. I love our profession. I want to make sure that students understand the opportunities within our profession, and I'll stop there.
Well, I like the way that you set that up, because one of the things that I always talk about with students, specifically with students, because they're always asking about, I hear when I get my CPA license, or when I get my accounting degree, I have to go either audit or tax. And that is like the biggest misnomer out there. Now, I know that this podcast is being broadcast across the Georgia Society of CPAs, and so it's probably good for me to go, hey, go get your CPA license. By the way, I do believe the CPA license is the crown jewel of the accounting profession. So not poo-pooing the license in any way, but for people to come in and say accounting is only the CPA route is such it's really damaging, because from what I see with groups like the IMA, which is management accounting, right? You don't need a CPA license to do management accounting. Will it help? Yeah, sure, it could help. You can help with the finance, with understanding how those numbers become reporting and things like that. But what I find fascinating is that people find different loves inside of accounting, because it's such a broad stroke that the auditing and the tax are certainly, they're probably the more popular side of accounting, just because historically that's kind of what we do as an accountant. But there's so many other. You've mentioned internal audit. You've mentioned you've mentioned the frameworks. You've mentioned the consulting. You've mentioned auditing. You've mentioned the private side. You've been a CFO or a controller of a multitude of different smaller segments. You've been at the top of organizations, and that is a career where you've been all over the place in the accounting and finance functions that a lot of people don't really get to be in all those different places, which is what I think what makes you extremely unique from your career path, because you can see this profession from all angles. So when you still come back and say, it's a beautiful discipline, it's a beautiful profession, and we need to embrace this because there's so many opportunities. This is the kind of stuff that we need to get out into our own talking points. And I think IMA does it really well. And it's not from the standpoint of IMA, putting their arms up and going, you don't need a CPA license. It has nothing to do with that. They are part and parcel. We are a team, right? And there are CPAs inside the IMA. There are CMAs inside the CPA world. It just crisscrosses. It's cross-functional training that make us better at what we do, because we understand smaller pieces of the business that become bigger cogs that just giant gears are turning the entire economy. Specifically on the IMA side, what I love about what they espouse is that not only are they around the world saying the same thing in every single country, with different words, but same principles. Is that they're looking at accounting from a holistic perspective of, we are the keepers of the truth. We are the source of truth. Everything filters through us. If we were a body part in the entire organism, we would be either the heart, because we pump the blood through the entire body, or we're probably the liver, because everything that comes through us, we see everything. We see the good, the bad, the ugly, right? It all has to come through us. We got to filter it, make sure it's okay. But what they do is they go out there and they have the same message across the globe that says, hey, accountants are cool. We do some really neat things. There are so many opportunities out here. Don't just look at accounting and see this one little sliver and say, oh, that's what they do. They're a bunch of nerds doing tax returns. They're a bunch of people that just like to audit and poke sticks at people. That is not the case. There are so many other things in this profession, and the fact that you've been able to see many of them, just again, I'm not surprised that you're writing articles for CFO.com, that you're being asked to speak at events and just be out there to tell people about your story, because people just want to be. They want to be like you. So I'm curious, as you start taking this wisdom that you've gathered, now you are the guy that when you go back and take an MBA, everybody's like, oh my gosh, what's this guy going to say? I got to know. Now you have all this information. You are now quite a prolific writer. Is that correct?
I've written a lot, yes.
And your articles, they're technical based. They're more qualitative. I mean, how are you pouring yourself back into this profession? Because now it seems like it's like you just crack that head open, and there's so much going on that you probably have great opinions, and you're probably very graceful in the way you approach them. But how are you taking all that wisdom and injecting it back into our profession?
I'm going to ask you to ask that question again because I got to go back. You definitely hit a hot button for me, and that hot button being when people think about our profession, they're thinking about public accounting, they're thinking about specifically tax audit. That makes me cry. That makes a big boy cry, and it makes me really upset. And it does because our profession is so much more. And I'll share a story just real quick. So when I was the finance executive for Campbell's supply chain operations out here in Ohio, we did recruiting. I think it was at BGSU. And when Campbell's was there, everyone would flock to us at a career fair, of course, because Campbell's well-known, big company. And I can't tell you how many of those accounting students would come up and they would say, well, I'll come back to the CPA part. I am a CPA and I love my CPA, but they would come up to me, hey, I want to work for Campbell Soup in a job like you have. I'm going to be getting my CPA. And I'm like, stop. You need to at least understand there are various options. So, and the way I think about it is the CPA, and I am one, and I love it, and it's been part of every role I've had. But you need to understand the CPA body of knowledge. It is more of that highly technical. In public accounting, obviously, it plays an extremely important role. In a company like a Campbell Soup or in a small business, it plays an important role, but really a more limited to the external financial reporting and or the internal audit. Whereas something like the CMA, Certified Management Accountant, that body of knowledge is much more sort of business decision-making, resource allocation, strategic partnering, strategy. They complement each other, but they are different. And so I am both. And being both is what makes me, I think, really strong in that. Started my career, got that CPA background. As I said, I'm still totally involved in the PI CPA. And I'm also totally involved in IMA because both are relevant. Now, in terms of getting the CPA, my son is working for a Big Four, close to the tree, in Chicago, though, and he's going for a CPA, and I'm encouraging him 110%. As soon as he's done that, I'm going to encourage him to get his CMA. Why? Number one, if his goal is to become a partner for the Big Four he's working with, having that CMA to complement the CPA, he'll better understand his clients.
100%.
Or if he's like so many of us who started our careers in public accounting but then moved on, we'll be better prepared to move on and be successful with or without an MBA. Or back to the university level, not every student is going to go down the public accounting path. So we need to make sure they know what all the variety of paths there could be. And we all do ourselves a disservice if all they hear about is public accounting, and what they hear about public accounting is working till 2:00 in the morning during busy season, and every year busy season is longer. Well,
we are
if we
our
don't
worst
get into
enemy
the
when it comes to
pipeline,
this stuff.
what are we going to do? So yeah, I take every opportunity I can just to share. There's so many wonderful opportunities. In fact, for PI CPA, I wrote an article, I don't know, a couple months back, all about corporate CPAs and the wide world of opportunity, basically saying whether or not you start your career in a public accounting firm with that CPA or not, but with that CPA, there's so many different paths you can go down. It is such a great profession.
Yeah, so this is something that I've really held out as kind of like a mission of mine. And having one foot in academia and one foot in the private sector, I'm very hard pressed to that over the last 25 years, academia just hasn't changed, and I understand the mechanisms of why this occurs. You have tenured professors who just don't want to change what they've been doing for many years. They have TAs that teach their stuff, and so it's kind of like they're many of them, if they're research oriented organizations, then their money, if you will, their prestige comes from researching as opposed to actually teaching. And that's not to say that a lot of these professors haven't been in the real world and can't add anything anecdotally to the classes. They're just not in the classes anymore. And so you have TAs who, I mean, let's be honest, they're just the better kids from the previous semester who are now teaching you how to do this stuff. They don't have any experience. So maybe one of them has an internship or something at a public accounting organization. So you further get like pushed into this public accounting thing. The thing that I find absolutely frustrating is, and this is kind of where the conversation is going now, that we're seeing this pipeline start to clamp down, right? There's less students that are going into the accounting discipline at numerous institutions across the United States. And people are kind of looking at each other like, what's the problem? What's the problem? Like, well, there's two things. One, you already mentioned it, is that we are our worst enemies when it comes to marketing what we do. And if that's the biggest megaphone on campus, which is public accounting, and we're telling everybody, oh man, you're gonna have busy seasons, you're gonna be working till 2 a.m. in the morning, you're gonna be totally stressed out, but it's awesome, it's awesome. You're gonna learn so much, and then you're gonna leave and go actually get a real job, right? It's like that's not really the marketing tool that we want to use. I'm not sure how many people say this job sucks, you should come take it, right? It's like, hey, this is gross, taste it. So, but the other side of it too is that that I think personally is that we are just not doing a very good job of teaching teaching what needs to be learned while they're in the university setting. And what I mean by that is that every organization out there, and if they're different and they're listening to this, raise your hand, let me know, because I'd love to have you on the show and we could talk about how different your accounting program is. They teach financial accounting before they teach cost accounting. As if you have to bust through financial and understand the reporting side before you ever get into the numbers. What you just said about, hey, my son is going to go into public accounting, he's going to get CPA, but if he ever goes to the private side, I'm going to go and encourage him to get a CMA. Why? Why would you do that? Because if you don't understand the numbers, how in the world can you report them? It's so frustrating. And I'm telling you, I just got a call from the American Accounting Association. Okay, in 2014, I was out in Anaheim pitching a new curriculum, and this was going to be the curriculum that bridged the gap from academia to the industry, specifically in public accounting, because that was where my experience was. And I was looking around at people going, they're quitting. These are masters of accounting kids. They all have their CPA license, because back in the late 90s. You all had 150 hours. You were all graduating with CPA licenses, and basically your last year was just to pass the test. So you could be a statistic for the organization. They knew, hey, we graduated so many people, they passed the test, and now they're out in the big 5, big 4, whatever it was. But I was looking around me, and all these really, really smart people were falling to the wayside. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. I knew them in school. They were really good at what they do. They understood the material. They knew everything. How come they're washing out? This is a big deal. And so, but nobody wanted to address the elephant in the room, which was, well, it's not really our job to train them. That's what the university does. And the university's like, wait, no. It's not really our job to do that. The on-the-job experience is valuable. It's like, okay, guys, then somebody's got to move, because the people that are getting screwed here are those young professionals, and they're falling. Like it's a bloodbath out here. So I had a curriculum. I took it over to the AAA. And it was very, very great curriculum. I still have it. I'm probably going to roll it out, see if I can get it back into the mix. As long as PwC doesn't introduce all this AI stuff, and then the bridge is just destroyed. When I was out there, I met these people, and made some friends. Some people were like, I don't really know that guy from Shorter University. It's kind of weird. He uses like cartoons to teach accounting principles. I don't know if I want to do that. But my accounting classes were full. And I had students actually wanting to come to class. sports kids too, right? They were coming to class because they're like, that's pretty cool. I taught fraud accounting, I taught the fraud examination, and I taught the basic accounting courses, and as well as the master's courses. Nobody had a problem understanding accounting in my class, right? Because I looked at it from the standpoint like, this has to be communicated differently. And so one of the things that I've found is that throughout the course of my career is that the reporting side, while it's very important for stakeholders and the talking heads that are out there on the TV shows and all the people that want to talk about, did the stock move up a penny? Oh my gosh, did it go down $4? All the stuff nobody really cares about until you have money to care about it. And then, but the people that are actually getting into the system, nobody really understands those numbers anyway. Heck, I would be willing to bet in the boardroom, more than half the people in the boardroom don't even understand those numbers. And so you're looking at this going, why are we emphasizing so much of our time on the reporting aspect when the operation side is where we need to be? And so what you said about getting out into the manufacturing side and really seeing the guts of the organization, why do those numbers, why do they work that way? What happens, like that variance, those variants we all hated in cost accounting, oh my gosh, do they come back like a whiplash and get you? It's like, oh, that's the reason why you need to know these things. So my thought is that if I was asked by the AAA to come back in, and they've actually asked me to be on the FASO group, which is the Financial Accounting Standards Organization, I think it is. I might be getting the words.
Yep.
So, and I told them going into it, I said, guys, I am so honored to be on this. It's taken me 25 years to get here. I'm so excited. I said, but understand, when I come in, I'm not doing this because I'm going to be another yes man that's just going to be agreeable to how it is. We have a systemic problem in academia. We are not putting prepared students. Our product is probably 80% complete before we shove it off into industry. And industry, you know what industry's doing? They're just going, yeah, okay, we get it. We're just going to mark down their hourly rates, and we're going to teach them over on this side. No, we need industry to come back and go, we need better. They have to be ready when they come out of school. And how are you going to do that? My two things that I think of, and I want to get your opinions on the second one. One, teach cost accounting before you teach financial accounting. Teach them the numbers, teach them the business, teach them those things that they need to know before they ever get into the reporting side, or you just have no context. Also, if you teach them cost first, maybe they do go the financial route and say, hey, I kind of like the technical side. I want to go the financial route. But if they don't, that's okay too, because then you have a guy that's a gal that's really excited about accounting, and they just want to be in accounting. They just want to run a company. They want to be that person. So we're starting them off with a more broad foundation and saying, hey, here's one way to go. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one, right? But the second one is, I honestly think we have a big problem in the way that we communicate this information. One of the things that that I had in these notes that come out on the ChatGPT, right, is about storytelling. The reason why I asked you about reporting and the articles and the things that you're putting out there, one of the things that makes a very dynamic financial individual is the way that they can weave everything together and tell a cohesive story, but with using numbers. So, Peter Frampton, who is with WealthBox, hails out of Geneva, Switzerland, has a color accounting platform, right? He says, when you look at an income statement, you look at a balance sheet and stuff, it's not the number column where people get confused. We know how to get those. It's the description column. We don't know how to tell the story of the numbers that are sitting there. And that's a gigantic problem, because if you can't tell the story as the auditor, the tax, the consultant, and things like that, what do you think the mom and pop across the table is doing when they're looking at you going, do you even understand my business, right? So I think the storytelling aspect from a curriculum standpoint, put cost in front of financial, that cures a lot of the ills, but also make storytelling mandatory inside. Forget about email, like business communications, emails and speeches and stuff like that. No one cares about that stuff. What they care about is how you communicate the stuff to your colleagues, to your managers, even to a client. But that's not a speech. That's not public speaking. That is basically weaving together elements of a story, using numbers as our verbs and nouns, and telling them what's going on in a way that they can understand it. that is what I think makes the IMA so valuable, is that that's exactly what they're teaching. They may not say it in that way, but that's what they're teaching, and that's what makes them so incredibly valuable. And when you dovetail that in with the CPA license, oh my goodness, you are the professional. I'll get off the soapbox.
So, well, we share similar soapboxes. That's where I come from totally as well. I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is accounting is the language of business. It is the language of business, which means everyone needs to understand it, not even just those that are going down the accounting or the finance path. Quite frankly, you're better, at least my experience, you're better marketers, you're better salespeople, you're better operational folks. They understand accounting. They understand the language of business. So, number two, to be an effective finance and accounting person, and I know in a college, they're two different departments often. To me, they're one and the same. They're intertwined. You're both. Heck, as a finance executive at our Campbell's Napoleon operations, I was the finance director and controller. I was both. That said, to be an effective financial person, accounting person, to be an effective CPA, to be an effective CMA, you need general business acumen. And we'll come back to the university part. Don't let me forget.
Okay.
But even just, throughout my career, maybe, that's why me being in internal or starting my Campbell Soup career in internal audit was so great, because 1 month I'm at a soup operation. 1 month, I'm at a beverage operation. 1 month, I'm at a Pepperidge Farm operation. I'm seeing it from the raw materials, the ingredients, getting mixed together, going through, whether it's being baked or whether it's being, in the vats, getting into the cans, into the packages, onto the pallets. Now I'm seeing 1 million cases of product, and I'm seeing it go out the door, the logistics. And you are absolutely right. You need to understand it from start to finish. The best finance and accounting folks within a Campbell Soup or within any company, I would argue, are those that are curious. They have taken the time to understand the process from end to end. They have taken the time to meet with their cross-functional partners, learn what their cross-functional partners do, what they're accountable for. And then when those individuals are at the table, they aren't just talking the numbers, they're able to tell the story. And not only are they able to tell the story, they're able to pull out the story when they're hearing their cross-functional partners talk about this or that.
That's
so
important.
You need that general business acumen. Back to academia. So you mentioned AAA. I mentioned at some point, I'm the perpetual volunteer. My intent is to actually get a paying role in an executive role at a nonprofit. That's my intent. But instead, I'm doing a lot of volunteer type stuff. For example, about a year ago, AAA asked me to join their AAA's Leadership and Accounting Education Board. So as you may know, AAA, they have different sections. And at first, I'm like, no, I'm not looking for another role like this, until I was talking to the chair of that board, and they're like, we need someone like you. As part of our charter, we require having, I think it's 4 or 5 practitioners, and they're all from the public accounting space. We don't have any CFO types. And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, I'm on. I'm on.
Blow the sleeves. Here we go.
Absolutely. And because you need that voice of, we're practitioners, and here's what we need. And so, interestingly, the reason we weren't able to meet the first time, I had mentioned I was in India, then went on to Middle East, specifically Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Well, the one event that I participated in, it was a joint IMA AAA Executives Roundtable with Yvonne Hinson, who's the president and CEO of AAA. And the whole conversation was around, how does industry and academia join forces to ensure the future professionals are ready, are fit for purpose.
That's huge.
It is huge. And it does go back to academia. What you're suggesting, I don't know if you recall, we met at the IMA Student Leadership Conference in Cleveland, and you were sharing a similar thought, and I was just I was all over it. Absolutely. Why aren't we teaching our not just accounting students? Quite frankly, we should be teaching all cross-functional students that cost accounting. Better yet, don't do it from a book. Get them out, visit a plant, visit an
Yes.
operation, let them see and touch so that number one, they understand process, how things flow. When they get into the accounting students, when they get into that financial reporting, let them understand, oh, when they talk about shrinkage or inventory loss or yields, oh yeah, I remember seeing that. That's what they were talking about. Now all of a sudden, there's a
It
visualization
all
that goes
makes
along with these
sense.
numbers. I am with you 110%. We need to do it different. And oh, by the way, well, obviously I don't get very passionate about this topic, but oh, by the way, when all of a sudden you can tangibly be part of it, you're engaged and you want to be involved.
Yeah.
So
I think accounting is one discipline that. So I'm a very visual learner, and so everything that I do, if you start throwing a whole bunch of numbers at me, I'm in my head. I'm actually drawing out these things, right? It's just the way that I operate. Some people are auditory learners, and good for them. They're the alphas of the alphas. But from a visual standpoint, I agree. I think that's there's something very tangible about going out to a manufacturing facility, seeing the raw materials, like, hey, that just got dropped off by a truck, and then, well, what are you going to do with it? It's like, well, we're going to store it over here because we're not ready to use it just yet. But when we do use it, here's what we do. And now it's inside of this process, don't, right? I keep going back to this. There's a 2.5-hour, 3-minute video snippet inside the Lorax, and DreamWorks came out and did an animated Lorax, and what I actually just did this in class at SCAD the other day because I'm trying to teach them that there's other things about business, right? There's the whole manufacturing cycle, but then at the end of the manufacturing cycle, there's the PR side, there's the legal side, there's all this other stuff. They even covered that in the Lorax. I mean, this 3.5-minute segment, it's so good that this is the one I look and go, I could teach an entire cost accounting course, a semester's long cost accounting, with this 10 seconds, this 10 seconds, this 10 seconds, and we could just take this whole thing apart. But what it does is it allows people to get a visual in their mind of, this is what he's talking about right now. That's when that guy was sitting on, whatever the visual was, whether it was the gobbledygook jumping out and there's a bird gets smashed with the smog or whatever. It's like, okay, be environmentally friendly, ethical decision making, right? Sustainability. But what I like about the visual pieces of it is making sure that if you're hands-on, you're touching things, you're moving things, you're physically engaging with the product itself. Accounting comes alive. And too many times do we just sit them in front of a book and we give them case studies like, oh, trust us, this is really interesting. Like, I don't know what you're doing.
Words
here.
on a
I'd
page.
much rather be a pop-up book, and I can like poke out that one and poke out that one and say, oh, look what just happened. I did this and the whole thing got unbalanced. I guess I need to balance it out. Poke out this one. Something stupid like that, but it lands the plane. It's actually one of the reasons why I'm really, really into this Wealthbox color accounting thing. They actually have it's a pop-up book. It's legitimate. They went to a Chinese manufacturer who makes pop-up books, and that's how they teach accounting. I looked at it, like, oh my gosh, this is the way to do it. This is the way. So again, great products. There's a bunch of people that are kind of jumping on this bandwagon, and I hope this is the future of accounting training because there's so much out there that we have yet to really reveal from the academic standpoint. Industry's already figured this out, but industry's kind of given up on whether is academia going to give it to us or we just have to train them on the job. I'd rather, you know what, don't worry about it. We'll take it from here. That shouldn't be where academia is, especially with how much money we're paying for these degrees. So I think that with, again, professionals like yourself who have been out in the world, you've seen so many different pieces of this of our discipline, and now you're back into it at the IMA, talking with AAA, writing the articles, and actually re-engaging from the sage, the Yoda floating in the swamp, guy. I think that I hope that more professionals take the track that you've taken and really turn themselves back into mentorship, because I think that's the one thing that's missing is that mentorship. And if we could kind of get out of ourselves, get out of our business, and actually say, hey, there's people that are watching that we need to bring along. One, we'll really enjoy our profession that much more because it's not about us anymore, right? It's about all of us. But also, I think we'll kind of reprioritize the work from, this is a people business. Numbers help us move this thing along. But at the end of the day, if that guy across the table doesn't like you, you ain't getting a job. That guy across the table really feels that you're emotionally connected on that one. You're gonna land work. You're gonna have fun. So you're gonna be working with friends, which is pretty cool. So, hey, curious. If anybody wanted to contact you to, I don't know, get you on a stage or maybe write an article or do whatever your world is working at the time, how would they get in touch with you? And yeah, how would they get in touch with you?
First of all, I would be totally honored. I would love it. And LinkedIn is probably the best.
Okay.
LinkedIn, Steve McNally, IMA, you put those two together, I'm going to pop. LinkedIn is probably the best way. May I go backwards just real quick?
Yes, I'm giving you the last word. You summarize this whole thing for us, buddy.
Well, no, this wasn't going to be last word. I'm reacting. You know, we're talking about, again, the academia and the tangible. Well, as finance and accounting folks, we need to wear many hats. I talk about that a lot, and you know, I know you've got your hats. I want to put on my hat here, and the reason I say this, when I was the finance executive at Campbell's operations in Ohio, one of the hats that I wore was our essentially regulatory affairs guy. And that included, for example, bringing in the governor, bringing in our senators, bringing in congressmen to do tours of our facility. And back to, it's not just finance and accounting folks who need to see it and hear the story. It was funny, even teaching my cross-functional partners, when you're doing a tour, the talking is great. Make sure that, you know, they can hear you. And in a manufacturing site, a trick there is have your headsets. But don't stop in a random place. Stop where something's moving. You know, whether you're talking to the accounting students, the young professionals, let them see the operations in motion, because then it sticks. I mean,
oh, it's amazing.
And then the other thing, this pop-up book, I haven't heard of that, but it did bring to mind when I was back in Camden with Campbell Soup, we wanted to teach our field sales organization basically change their mindset from volume to profitable volume. And what we did, it was adult learning. And ironically, the company, I think it's Root Map LLC, they're based out here in Ohio, which I didn't know until I moved out here, even though I'd used their products. But essentially, it was a game, I'll call it, where, you know, there's this map and it showed for every dollar of revenue, how it flowed through sales, cost of goods sold, administrative, and it was visual, it was interactive, and you know, something like that could be helpful in a classroom too, to just help students really grasp it. So if you don't have the ability to take them to a manufacturing site, at least get something visual, whether it's this pop-up book or otherwise, that helps them to see it as well as hear. It makes all the difference.
Oh, it really does. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time this morning. I know we have a little technical difficulties in the beginning, but we got them ironed out. I think the conversation was electric, and I'm very thankful for practitioners like yourself who are out there and just being great mentors to not only the younger people who are coming up, but also your colleagues who are surrounding you. So thank you for what you do, and I'm a big fan of the IMA. I hope you stick around for once you're emeritus, once you're done with that, you stay involved as your universal volunteering goes. But if you ever find your way down to the Georgia, specifically the Savannah area, let me know. Maybe we'll take it to a banana ball game.
I would look forward to it. We got the greatest profession in the world, right? So make sure we share the word.
Yes, sir. Well, hey, thank you very much, and yeah, we'll catch you on the flip side.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Steve. Bye-bye.